this tutorial we are going to cover the different aspects of using Excel 2007. This is a quick guide. We'll start with the basics and then move on to some of the more advanced features. And once you have opened Excel, this is what you'll be getting on your screen. Notice that it is very similar to what we are used to using in Microsoft Word 2007 and PowerPoint 2007. The new interface here, it is with Office ribbon, where you have the different tabs such as Home, Insert, Page Layout, and the different additional tabs related to Excel such as the Formulas, Data, Review, and View. Just like in Word, the Home tab has the general components, basic components such as the different groupings, such as the font section here, the alignment section, number formatting, different styles, cells, and additional editing functions as well. Just like in Word, you have the different groupings, like I said, and then within the grouping you also have this drop-down arrow which will bring up the old menu, the windows, or the old windows we used to use in previous versions of Excel, where you can change multiple properties from the same window. Right below the toolbar, or right below the ribbon, we have here as well the formula area where you can insert and it will display the different functions that you are using in specific areas of Excel. Additional components of Excel, as you are aware of, you have the different columns and the different rows, and then wherever those rows and columns intersect, that is referred to as the actual cell. So for example, in this case, this cell here, it will be referred to as B7. Then the way it works is the Excel files are actually saved as spreadsheets. They are referred to as spreadsheets, and then these spreadsheets, they actually have worksheets. And notice that once you open Excel for the first time, or when you are creating a new spreadsheet, you have the different sheets that you can switch from one to the other. Think of those sheets as the pages on a notebook. Notice that you can switch from one sheet to the other as well if you have many of them, by simply clicking on this navigation bar in the bottom right if you have more that you couldn't see. If you want to create a new sheet or a new worksheet, you can also click on this icon right here. It will add additional sheets. Notice as well that you have a browsing bar on the bottom of the screen where you can move from left to right, and of course remember that you have also the zoom in and zoom out buttons, just like in Microsoft Word and other applications that we have been using so far. Keep in mind as well that on the top left you have the Office button with some of the common commands and also the Excel options. So if you wanted to change something about Excel, you'd click on the Office toolbar first and then Excel options. And then right next to the Office button, you also have the Quick Access toolbar, which is an area that you can customize and add different icons that you might want to use in the future. For example, if I want to add this function icon, I can just right click on it and choose Add to Quick Access Toolbar. So the question is, how do we get started entering data and utilizing Excel for our day-to-day activities? Well, it's very simple. Open Excel and then in any of the cells start typing. Any of those cells, by the way, they can take different types of data. You can enter a general number, or let's say with the decimal points and so on. You can put currency, short date, long date, percentages, and text as well. Also, you can put in any of the cells, you can put formulas, which, by the way, they start with the equal sign. So that's an important concept to keep in mind. Now, let's say we want to put the title of this spreadsheet. In this case, we'll go ahead and type here my budget. And then if you want to take this section of my budget, and let's say you want to center this in this area, in this range of cells, you can simply select that range of cells and then click on this little icon here for under the alignment section for merge and center. And then once you have merged and centered it, you can make the font larger, you can change the color of the font, you can also put various types of formatting right below that section, let's say thick bottom border, and it'll put a line under it. And then you list the different categories. Now it's important, before you start entering data in a spreadsheet, it's important to kind of plan the spreadsheet initially. Maybe even take out a piece of paper and outline how you want the data to be represented, because you don't want to enter information and data into a spreadsheet and then have to restructure it completely again. But in our case, just to demonstrate a couple of the concepts here, I'm going to just simply create a small budget for us. So it'll be item, this is like a label, and then amount. And then the item here, let's say our personal budget, the biggest item probably is a mortgage. And then another item, let's say car expenses. Then let's say food, miscellaneous, bills, and so on. Now notice that car expenses here, it's longer than the actual width of the cell. In this case, you have two choices. You can either drag this column to the right, or you can simply double click in between the columns here and it will self-adjust it to the right width. So let's say you're paying $1,000 a month for the mortgage. Car expenses, let's say with insurance and everything, it is $300, and then other bills $300. Select the column and then format this so that it is currency. You can select also, you can click on the $sign here, and it will do the same thing as well. Now of course you can format this any way you want, so you can make this bold so it's more visible as well. Now down here we want to put a line so it kind of tallies those numbers up. Click on the formatting area here under the font, and let's say we want to put a double border, and there it is. At this point we'll type here total, and then we want to calculate here the total of all of these numbers. And all formulas in Excel, they start with the equal sign. And then we're going to do this the hard way first by just putting in the whole structure of the formula. So you have the equal sign that the formula start, then usually you have the function itself. In our case it is sum, and then you open parentheses and you specify the starting range, which is in our case it is B5. You can simply click on the cell here and it'll put the actual reference all the way through B10, because we might add something here on B10 as well. Then close parentheses and then hit enter. Notice it calculated all the numbers together, it added them up, and it gave us $2,250 as a total. Again, keep in mind the formula is equal sign, the function, open parentheses, and you specify the beginning range separated by a colon for the end range. In this case, if your mortgage now it is $1,100, notice that the number here will change automatically for the total. The other way to enter the total or the formula is by simply going to the place where you want the formula, and then you click on this icon under the editing and you choose sum. Notice the system is smart enough to kind of identify the range that you want to specify, but it's important that you double check this range. The other way to double check it or to make sure is by simply dragging down the mouse in the area that you want to select and then hit enter. So in this case we still have 2,350. Now at this time let's learn some of the other functions, as multiplying or putting the same formula in multiple cells throughout a spreadsheet, and also calculating the maximum, the minimum, the average, and also counting a bunch of numbers. So in our case here, let's say we want to calculate the total of our expenses for January. So in our case here we could either do the formula equal sum, that's the function, and then C6 colon, and then the end range is C14. Close parentheses, hit enter. That's one of the ways. Or the other way would have been, again like I showed a little bit ago, by clicking on the sum here and hitting enter. Now instead of us having to put the sum also in cell D15, and E15 doing this, wasting my time. What I could do is, by holding the mouse on the bottom right of this cell, I can simply drag this to the right. And notice at this point the formula has been adjusted to calculate the range accordingly. Like, notice it says D6 to D14 instead of, in the previous one it was C6 to C14, and then in this one it's E6 through E14. This is considered the autofill feature. So we can do the same thing on the right hand side here. So now we know for the month of January I have spent $1,386. However, for the total for training, let's say, in our case here, it is $700. So if we want to put the same formula for the totals for each item here for all these 3 months, what we could simply do is drag this icon down. So you just hold the mouse again until it changes to a plus sign, and then drag it down. And notice, of course, you can format this to be in the currency, and it will give you at this point that for office supplies you spent $1,100 for all 3 months. So that's the autofill feature. Autofill feature, you can actually use it for other functions as well. Anything that is in a sequence. So let's say you have the day Monday, and you have to put Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Anything that is in a sequence, you can do the same thing here. You can just drag it down, and notice it just fills them in a sequence. Let's say you have months of the year. And let's say you have numbers. 1. Notice at this point for numbers it does the same number automatically there as number 1. However, you can click on this drop down at the end of the range and you can choose fill series, and that will change the sequence automatically. Let's say you want every 3 numbers, like 1, 4, 7, 11, 14, and so on. The way to do that is by specifying the first number, and then you specify the second one, which is your beginning range and your end range. You select the 2 together and then drag it down. Notice you have them in a sequence by 3. If you want them in a sequence by 4, just simply change second number here to be 1, 5, then drag it down, and now you have them in 4s, and so on. So this is very helpful to save you time in entering data if it is in a sequence of some sort. So anything that is in a sequence, this could be used for. Calculating the maximum, or finding the highest number in a range of numbers here. Here's how you do it. Let's say in this cell we want to calculate to find the highest number, or the maximum number of this range. So what we could do is we can just simply hit the equal sign, and then the function is max, and then we state the range. So our range in our case is from C6 all the way to C14. Close the parentheses, hit enter. So the highest number is 500. If we changed it to 550, notice that the number here, it's automatically updated, as well as the total for January and additional totals on the other side here. Now, if we want to calculate the minimum, you can do the same thing by entering the formula manually, or you can simply go to this under the editing group and choose one of the functions for minimum. And then you specify the range, hit enter, and the lowest number is 13. Now what about if we want to find the average of all these expenses? And the average here, we can still go under the editing tool, click on average, select the range, and hit enter. The average for all of those expenses, it's $159. And then if you want to count all of those numbers, how many values you have here, instead of you having to count them manually, you can simply go and put a formula to count them, and you can simply go and choose count numbers, specify the range, hit enter, and it tells you it's 9 of them. Now, notice it's showing you in dollars here. However, you can go and change the formatting to just a general number, and that'll tell us that it's only 9 in total. A couple of additional functions that are very common in Excel that you might need to use it from time to time is the division. So dividing two numbers, it's fairly easy. Basically, keep in mind that formulas start with the equal sign, and let's say we want to divide this number by this. So basically, we can just go and click on that cell, and division is represented by the slash, and then choose the other reference, hit enter. That's our actual number. If you want to multiply two numbers, to multiply them, you simply start the formula by using the equal sign, and then choose the first number that you want to multiply by the second one, and hit enter. And if you want to subtract two numbers, you can still do the equal sign to start the formula. You choose the first reference minus the second one and hit enter. It is important that instead of you putting in there 550, for example, minus 13, you always want to put the reference for it, because those numbers could change, and then when the numbers change, the new value will be reflected and calculated as part of that formula. Notice that if I put here the training expense to $150, a whole bunch of numbers will change automatically, such as the total for training, the total for January, all of these minimum, maximum, and so on, as well as those other formulas here. So if I go and put training to $1,000, notice everything is updated automatically. At this time we're going to discuss a concept in regard to the absolute versus relative references. If you remember, when we copied the total, or when we created the formula for the total for January, we simply dragged it to the right, to these sections here. And we did that by simply holding the mouse down and dragging it to the far right. And notice the formula was adjusted accordingly because it was in a sequence. We initially had it to C6 to C14, then the system detected automatically that now you are trying to calculate to put this formula in the next column over, which would be D6 to D14, and then E6 to E14, and so on. However, there may be times when you have a specific locked down value, which means, like in our case here, let's say you have a budget of $20,000, and now there is, because of the bad economy, there is a 5% decrease in your budget. So you're going to calculate your budget. Let's say it was for training, it was $4,000. Now how do you calculate the difference and also what your new budget is? So notice what we could do here. Now to find out the difference, basically we have to multiply 4,000 times 5%, find how much lower, how much the difference will be. So basically we need to put a formula here, the equal sign, 4,000, which was for this item, times, which is represented by the asterisk, 5%, the value, and hit enter. So our budget is going to go down by $200 in this category. Now you can either enter this manually for each one of them, like to calculate it for office supplies, so you could do the same thing by clicking on E29 times 5%, and that gives us $5 in this case. Or we could make it simpler for ourselves and drag this formula down. However, notice when you drag the formula down, notice that the calculation is not correct. You had a $5,000 budget for advertising. Now your new value, with a 5% decrease in your budget, you have a $20 million budget. So why did this happen? Notice the formula. It's multiplying E31, which is 5,000, times E28. So E31 times E28. E28 is multiplying 4,000 by 5,000. And that's not the correct formula. So to fix this problem, what you do is you'd reference the 5% value, you'd reference E26 as an absolute value so that that doesn't change when you move from one cell to the other. And to lock it down to a specific cell, you'd need to put in a $sign in front of each item here, in front of the column reference and in front of the cell reference, because we don't want this value to change to move down to the next one down. And then we hit enter. Now that we have that formula in place, notice it's $E, $26, we can drag it down and the value will be calculated correctly. Notice it's always referring to E26. So this is what's referred to as absolute references. So we have the first part of it, our reference, it's a relative reference, which means you can move from one cell to the other in a sequence. And then the second part of it, it's locked down to just calculate based on E26 by using the $sign. They also have the mixed references, and mixed references is when you're locking it either by the column or by the row reference. I know it may not be as clear of a concept, but basically you'd use it when you have, let's say, a decrease, a number that you always want to refer to, or a coupon code for the sales that are being applied from now on, or some kind of specific cell that you want to refer to. Now, a couple things in regard to the formatting of this spreadsheet. Basically, you can select the area that you want to format, and then in your computer you'll actually have a different toolbar because your screen is going to be larger. In my case, I have to click on this drop down under Styles here, and then I'm going to choose Format as Table. And notice there are many different tables here in different formats, so you can pick any of those, and you could also specify that my table has headers, and then the formatting has been changed automatically for this area. If it is only certain cells that you want to format, you can simply select that cell or a couple of cells or a certain range, and then you can click on Styles here and then choose different styles that you can apply to it, and then change the font size for it. Notice if I want to center this, my office budget, you can simply select, because notice it's not all the way to the right, you can select all these columns or all these cells and then click on Merge and Center. That's a quick way to format the table without too much work. Now notice as well that in the bottom here there is a little triangle, a little blue triangle. If you want to expand this table to apply the formatting to further more of this area, you can simply drag it down and it's going to include these other sections as part of the table. If I don't want them, I can just bring it up and exclude that section from that same formatting. Well, there are a couple ways to put the headers and footers. Notice under the insert you have all kinds of tools here that you can insert. You can insert pictures just like we did for Microsoft Word. You can insert clip art, shapes, just like in Microsoft Word, remember. And you can also remember you can spin these any direction you want. You can apply the styles and themes as well, just like in Word. And also you can insert smart art. If you remember smart art from Microsoft Word, it's exactly the same component. However, if you want to insert headers and footers, it's also available from header and footer icon under the Insert tab. Or another simpler way is by in the bottom here, there is a view for page layout. If you click on it, it will give you a preview of what the page will look when you print it out. At this point, notice there is an area here for click to add header, and you can simply add the header for this specific spreadsheet. And of course you can make the font here. You can format this using the same tools that you have under the Home tab. Same concept for the footer, so you can scroll to the bottom of that page and you can click on Insert Footer. Notice under the headers and footers you can do all kinds of the file name. If you want to switch to the standard view, you can simply click on normal view here and it will display the normal view without the headers and footers. So you have the layout and the normal view. In our case, if we want to delete this column, you can simply right click, choose delete, and everything will be shifted to the left for our spreadsheet so that it can fit on that page. Next item I'll briefly discuss is how do we calculate percentages. Supposedly we are dealing with enrollment, so let's say enrollment in 08 and then enrollment in 09. Let's say in 08 we had 240 students that were enrolled as freshmen, and then in 09 we had 375. Notice we want to change this to just basic numbers in our case. We just want general numbers. And then over here we want to express the percent difference. To calculate the percentages correctly, you need to use the following concept. Basically, suppose you invested, let's say, $1,000, and then your return now, or you made $1,200. Now you want to calculate what the percentage was. So in our case, it's $1,200 minus 1,000. That was $200 profit, and then we want to divide that by the initial investment, and that will give us a percentage. Same way here. We want to take 375 minus 240, whatever the difference is, divided by 240. So we'll put here the equal sign, and then we need to open parentheses, and we need 375, the C20, minus 240, close parentheses, and then divide that by the initial number, B20. Again, remember you need to put the actual references, and also in our case we are putting the parentheses because we want the computer to do the difference first and then the division second. Notice it says 0.56. Now we need to change this, to remember this, to change the formatting here in percent. So this is a percent, and it says we had an increase of 56%. Now if we want to get this formula for our investment as well, notice those are not working because there was no data on this side. Notice our percent for the investment here, we made 20% increase. If we had, let's say in enrollment in 08, let's say we had 400 students, and now we have 375, we have a decline of 6% in our enrollment. Or let's say we made $800 instead of from 1,000 invested, we lost 20% in our investment. So that's how you'd represent this in percents. A nice new feature in Excel 2007 is also the conditional formatting. And this is actually quite nice. We'll try this, let's say, for our January expenses. So if I go and select all this, and then click on styles here, again in your computer you'll probably have directly this conditional formatting, and notice you can create rules. Let's say I want to determine any expenses of more than $100, and I want to kind of highlight those so that they stand out. Consider, let's say you have 1,000 records here and you want to point out only a certain criteria. So you can click on highlight cells rules, and let's say you want to specify greater than a specific value. So let's say greater than $100, and then mark this in dark red or some kind of text. So let's say light red fill with dark red text. Notice anything that is more than 100, it's highlighted. So if I change the copying to 600, notice it will automatically be sorted within that category. Let me undo this, and now you can also utilize additional formatting features, such as you can do the top 10% or the top 10 items, or above the average. Let's say you want to list everything above the average. Notice, you select it, everything above the average is anything above 550 in our case. Or you can go back to conditional formatting, and you can also do the data bars, and this is quite nice. As you see, you can specify the larger the number, the larger the bar to represent that data is. So you could do this for a lot of different cells where you have data to represent it accordingly. So you can see which one has the largest expense. You can simply go under conditional formatting and there are also icon sets, so you could specify like a green light, red light, yellow light for certain numbers, or you can put also these colored arrows where it'll specify that the number is down or up depending on the rest of the numbers in that spreadsheet. So that's a nice feature in representing your data and the formatting within that data, so it kind of identifies key components within your spreadsheet. Now, what about additional functions and additional formulas? Because most of the time you'll be using adding numbers, getting the sum, getting the average, and counting, and that type of thing. However, what about if you want to insert additional functions? How do you get access to those, and also how do you use those formulas? Well, fortunately, and I guess unfortunately, there are a lot of formulas and a lot of functions in Excel. So if you go on the tab under formulas, there are different categories. There are financial formulas, such as all of those. There are logical formulas, and false, if, and there are date and time formulas, lookup formulas. So if I click on insert function here, notice that there are financial, date, statistical, database, logical, engineering, and so it's a lot of them. Now if you don't know how to do something, you can always type a question here. Let's say credit card interest payment, and then you click on go. Notice you have a bunch of formulas or recommendations that the computer gives you, like such as FV. It returns the future value of an investment based on periodic constant payments and constant interest rates. Or you could use the PMT option formula, which calculates the payment for a loan based on constant payments and constant interest rate. Now if you're not sure how to use this, you can always click on help on this function, and it'll go to my for each item out of this formula, such as what the rate is, what the NPER stands for the total number of payments per loan. Let's say you got a mortgage loan and you have to pay it in 30 years. That means in 30 you'll have 360 payments, because 12 payments per year times 30. PV is a present value, such as, let's say, the actual amount of the loan. And so you'd read this, and then you'll see that that's how you'd enter the formula. So the idea here is you go and search for the function, and most likely you'll not need those advanced functions in general. But if you need them, click on the help on this function and you should be able to figure it out. An additional advantage of using spreadsheets is that you can, let's say you have a spreadsheet with a lot of data, and you can sort it by various different attributes within that specific spreadsheet. So we have here, let's say, Solly's Coffee Shop sales. And we have the titles, dates, the amount of dollars for each item, the attendant who was on duty that day, the payment, and then also we have the items, such as for C it stands for coffee, G is for general item that they bought, blank is for any other credit card purchases that they did. So now the question is, how do we sort this? Well, one of the easiest ways is to go to that specific field that you want to sort them by. Let's say I want to sort them by attendant, who was on duty at that time. Click on the Sort and Filter button on the ribbon, and then choose A through Z. And notice you have BB here for Benjamin, who was on duty at that time, and all the sales for all the different days. Now let's say I want to change it to sorted by date. I go under the date field, somewhere in the any of the cells, click on sort order, and you can do in ascending order or descending order, either way. And notice I chose descending, so this has from May and then back to the beginning of April. So basically, to sort data within a spreadsheet or within a worksheet of that spreadsheet, basically go to one of the cells and click on sort and choose the type of sorting that you want. Starting in Excel 2007, nowadays you can also do data filtering. So let's say I have all of these sales here, and let's say I want to generate a view here with only the sales by SK. Well, to do the filtering, what you'd have to do is basically go to any of those fields and then click on Sort and Filter, and then click on the Filter option. Notice now that you choose the Filter option, you have a drop down for each column, depending on what they may be. So let's say I want only by a specific attendant. I can choose to unselect them all, and let's say I want only the sales from BB. Click OK. Notice at this point I have all the different sales just for that specific criteria. To clear this, so now at this point I could format this, print it out, and then I have only this data. To clear this filter, you can simply click on the little filter icon here and choose Clear Filter from Attendant. The other option is I could filter by, remember the C stands for the coffee and so on. Let's say I want to sort or to filter anything that is only the coffee sales. So in this case, I can simply click on the drop down, unselect them all, and just choose C for coffee. Click on it, and at this point I have all the records that have only coffee sales. You can additionally filter by multiple criteria. Let's say I have the coffee sales here, but I want to see only the ones for April. So I go and unselect the May ones and click OK. Now it should give me only the sales of just coffee for April. Let's say I don't want April anymore, but I want May. Uncheck April, choose May, click OK, and that's all the coffee sales for May. To remove it, click on the drop down, clear filter, and then clear filter as well on the other one. So as you can see, it's very powerful and very flexible. Creating charts in Excel. You can create charts with basically any type of data, and in our case we are still going to use this coffee shop sales example, and we have the still filtering enabled. We have only the coffee sales, let's say, and in our case we want to see how our sales are doing by each date and represent that in a chart. So in our case, first we have just the coffee sales, but we need to sort the data so it is A through Z, so in an ascending order first. So we have 4, 1, 4, 2, 4, 3, and so on. And then at this point we want to select the data, the actual data that we want to put in a chart. So we just select all the range here, and then at this point we want to insert a chart, and we could do a column chart, or we could do line charts, pie charts, bar charts, and other types of charts as well. There are about 6 different types of charts. It depends, the type of chart that you use, it will depend on how you want to represent that data. So notice the difference here. If I choose a column chart, and I'm going to choose just a plain basic column chart in our case, and notice it represents the data in this way. You can also format this any way you want. Notice the different formatting tools, and it will give you the different dates and the sales up and down. However, notice I can select the same data, but yet go and choose to insert, let's say, a line chart. And notice when you go and insert a line chart, this is a better representation of how your sales are doing compared to the previous chart. So let me repeat this again here. I'm going to select the same data, and I'm going to insert another chart. But in this case it will be a line chart. It is the same type of data, but the second one, it is clearer, where you can identify that there are patterns. And here you can identify that let's say for 2008, that weekend, these might have been weekends that the sales could have gone up, and so on, and then identify the different trends in the data rather than just looking at a bunch of bars. So it's up to you how you utilize this, but that's how you create the different charts for your data. In this part of the online tutorial, we are going to actually discuss how you calculate values in cross worksheets. Supposedly you have a 6-month expense report here, and you have training expenses, you have office supplies and so on for January, then you have the February expenses, March, and then you go under each month, and then in there you have recorded, let's say, the actual expenses for that month, such as for training, and you're keeping track of each item for your training. So how do we take these totals, let's say for the training, and link it to our summary worksheet so the numbers are updated automatically? And here's how you can do it. Basically, you'd go to that monthly spreadsheet and enter some of the values as if you're keeping track of different expenses. So for training, let's say you have on January 1st the amount $454, check 1, 2, 3, 4, and the description is for Power Camp. Then supposedly on 1/2/2009 you spent more on training. So you have here another $300 and you paid by check 234, whatever it is, the check number, and this was on eLearn. Notice our total for training is now $754. All I have is a sum here, a formula that calculates anything in those fields. And then I go down under office supplies, and let's say on 1/13 for office supplies I got some more paper, another $200 in paper, and you paid by whatever check number. Now on the very top here you could also put a formula that calculates anything in these columns. So to put a formula there, just like we learned before, you can simply click on the sum or put the equal sign and then simply drag this all the way to the bottom wherever it ends. Hit enter, and notice that for actual expenses for January 2009 is $1,354. Now let's say we want to take these numbers, 754, 400, 100, and so on, and put them in our summary sheet. So how do we put that in the summary sheet? For example, the number for training. Well, it's very easy. All you have to do is you press the equal sign, and then you go to that sheet, to that worksheet that has the actual total. So you click on 754 in our case, and then hit enter. Notice what it put there, 754, but notice it's linked to the January expenses and then cell B6 on that worksheet. And whatever the value is there, it's going to bring it into the summary sheet. So let's go ahead here to the January expenses and add more for training. Let's say there was an expense for $260, check number, and this was for PowerPoint. Notice now our total expense for training, it's $1,014. The actual expenses for total month of January are $1,614. And now if we go back to our summary sheet, notice that our total for the training has been automatically updated. Now let's say we want to put the office supplies. So we hit the equal sign, go to the January expenses, go to the office supplies total, hit enter. It brings that total as well. Then we go to computer expenses, put an equal sign for starting a formula, go to the actual value, hit enter on that cell that has the total. And then we go under copying, and then we can get the totals here. Now we can calculate the totals, probably to double check our numbers. We can calculate it from here. So we can put the total of all of those, hit enter. It says 1614. 1614 matches with the total for January here, so our numbers are in order in this case for the month of January. Then we can go to the February, and notice I have 454. Let's say this was $22 there, and so. And we can do the same on our summary sheet. We can go under February, put the equal sign, go to February's expenses, go to the training field that has the total, hit enter, and it brings the $22 over. Same thing for the next item. Hit the equal sign, go to February, go and get the office supplies total, hit enter. Now we have the new office supplies. And you do the same thing for additional sheets such as the ones for March, April, May, and so on. Now you could again put the total here and bring additional numbers from that worksheet for February. So it's just as simple as that. It's basically putting the equal sign where you want to start that number, the destination, or where you want the number to be put in from a specific worksheet. You put the equal sign, then you go to the worksheet that has the total, you click on the cell that has the value, hit enter, and notice it puts the value right there. If you go and change those values, you add an additional 200 here for computer expenses. The total will be updated here under the month of February, as well as under the summary sheet, brought back to 300. So it's very easy and very powerful. Inserting comments. A nice feature in Excel is as well the capability to insert comments for certain types of data and certain types of fields. So let's say, and you can do this by the way in any type of field here. It could be a text field, it could be a number field that has a formula. So you want to insert comments. Let's say you want to explain where you are getting this number. You can click on Review and then click on New Comment. In there, notice you can put whatever you want to put in there as far as description. You could say this number comes from the January worksheet and the formula was entered pressing equal sign in this cell and then going to the January worksheet and clicking the cell that has the value. Remember, you can adjust this, the size of this, make it bigger or make it smaller. Or here you could say some other description here, another comment. You could say customer paid by check number 15. Notice they'll have a red triangle. You can hold the mouse on it and it will display you the information in it. So it's a nice feature. You'd use this only if you don't need to sort any data by those comments. This is just further explanations. Integrating Excel with Word. One of the nice features of Microsoft Office is that when you're using Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Outlook, all of these applications are part of the same suite, and those different applications, they can interact with each other without having to spend a lot of time in converting and getting data to go over from one system to the other or from one application to the other. So in this case, what I'm going to demonstrate is how do you take an Excel spreadsheet, the data from an Excel spreadsheet, and put it in a report in a Microsoft Word document. Well, it is very easy, and there are two ways of doing it. You can have the data so that it's not linked to the spreadsheet, so it's not real time data, it's not pulling the data automatically from the spreadsheet. Or you can have it so it's actually tied up to the spreadsheet. So let's say you want to, at any point, to create a report on your budget, and you have this report with text and all that type of stuff. What you could do is you could have it linked directly to your budget spreadsheet, and then the data will be updated automatically in your Word document or your Word report that you're about to submit. So here's how it gets done. So basically you need to have Excel open, and you select the data that you want from Excel. And let's say that this is the data that I want to have from Excel. And then I click on, actually I don't want my office budget, I can just simply select the data that I want from here and then copy it. You can click on Home here and choose Copy, or press Ctrl C, either one of them will work. Then you go to Word, you open Microsoft Word, and remember, in Word you don't have to reinvent the wheel, say. You can actually use one of those templates. If you're ever creating a report, you can always go under the Office button, click on New here, and on the left you have all types of different templates. So let's say I want a report. Go and choose Reports, and then pick one of the reports from here. It can be any of them, but let's say it's a business report of some sort. It goes to Microsoft, it downloads it, and you can put your company name and so on, street, proposal. There's a whole bunch of directions. You could have all kinds of text. Suppose this is your text, and then you could have one of the sections here that says current expense report, and supposedly this is the rest of your text there. And right in here you want to insert that report from Excel. So what you could do is you can click on Paste, and then there's the report from Excel, the data from Excel. At this point, if I click on Save and give it a name and save it, close Word, open Word up again, I should have the data in here. But the data is not linked at this point to Excel. So if I go into Excel and change some information here, let's say I change, instead of training $1,000, let's say training was $2,000. Notice the numbers change automatically and so on. However, if I go to Word, that data is not updated. So how do we make it so it actually goes to Excel and pulls the data whenever you update it from Excel? Well, here's how you do it. Basically, instead of just simply pasting this data from Excel like we did before, so suppose at this point I go back to Excel and I want to copy this again. So now I want to have it linked to my spreadsheet in Excel. So all I have to do is go and select the data just like we did before, copy it, or press Ctrl C, either one of them will work, and then I go to Word. Now notice here it says Current Expense Report linked to Excel. You click somewhere in here and then choose Paste. Under the Paste there's a drop down here and you have Paste Special. And under Paste Special you choose Paste Link and then Microsoft Office Excel Worksheet Object. And then you click OK. So again, you're pasting a link to the Excel spreadsheet for this component of your Microsoft Word document. Then you click OK, and notice this is the data from Excel at this point. If I click on Save on my Word report, close Word completely, then go to Excel, and let's say at this point now, let's say my training needs for the month of January were $5,000. For some reason they went up. Notice the total now for January is 6,336. If I go to Word and I want to run this report again to send it to whoever to report on this, I can simply click on Word, open that report, and then it asks me, do you want to update this file from the linked file in Excel? All you have to do is click on Yes. If you click on No, of course it's not going to be updated. So you click on Yes, and then scroll down to wherever you have the report, and notice that the training expenses now are $5,000 instead of $1,000 that they used to be before. You could technically double click on it and it will actually edit the data from Excel as well, from within Word. So that's how you link Word and Excel together and import data between the two. An additional component under the mailings, and an important component, is actually the mail merge. Mail merge basically is to create a form letter which you intend to print or email multiple times, sending each copy to a different recipient. You can use this even for a mission strip. You can use this for cards or for students, applicants, or customers, or things of that nature. Basically, you have one sample letter and you want to personalize it by sending it to each individual. Let's say instead of saying dear supporters, you would say, dear Bob, thank you for your gift of whatever the amount was on such and such a date for the mission strip to a specific place. And the way it works is that you have to have the form document, and then you also have to have the data file. The data file could be an Excel file, it could be nowadays also in Word 2007, it could be a table, or it could be an Access database. But suppose you have a data file called Mission Strip Donations, and very similar to this, and you have recorded the first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, and the amount that was donated. And then you have also the date and comments as to what you were able to do with that donation. You save all of this information in a spreadsheet and then close it. Once the document has been saved, now at this point you can go and create a new mail merge. To do that, you click on Mailings tab, and then you go to Start Mail Merge. And you can do different ways. However, I do recommend that you choose the step-by-step mail merge wizard. Once you choose a mail merge, you can choose whether you're going to send letters, email messages, envelopes, or you're going to prepare labels or a specific directory. Let's say we want to do letters in this case. You click on Start Document, and then you can choose either the existing document here, or you can choose from a template or an existing document. So let's say I'll choose one from a template, and then the next thing is to pick a template. At this point I'll choose a blank document, and the next step is to select the recipients. So first we chose what document we are going to use. I could have used also the existing document that I had from before. Now we are going to choose the recipients. You can pick them either from Outlook, or you can have an existing list, which in our case it will be that Excel file. So I click on Browse, then I go under my documents, and then one of the files here is a mission strip donations. Now it asks which sheet it is in that spreadsheet. In our case it is actually sheet 1. Click OK, and now it's displaying all the different records in that spreadsheet. You can sort them, you can filter them, you can find duplicates, and you can manipulate this file additionally. Click OK for now, and then the next step is to write the letter. At this point you could say Dear, and then you click on Insert Merge Field. For example, first name, space, insert merge field again, last name, comma, thank you for your donation, on, and then you can put the date, have the computer put in the date, the amount of $, and choose the amount for our missions to Mexico. Say additional text here, and notice how you can do the spelling as well. And then in another line here you could put another field called comments, and you could say sincerely. At this point, this is your form. You can format this additionally. For example, the amount here, we can make this bold so it stands out. And now we go to home here. And then we can make the comments as well in bold as well. And now we go back to mailings. You can insert additional fields and so on. At this point, technically, you can actually save this file as a form, and then anytime in the future you want to run this mail merge again, you'll actually be able to just run it without having to go through all of these steps again. So if I choose File, Save, okay, next one is to preview our letters. Notice it says now the first name there. Thank you for your donation, 9/25/2008, in the amount of $25 for our mission trip to Mexico. Thank you for your generosity. That was one of my comments, and you can go and preview the letters for each specific user. You could have 1,000 letters generated this way. Next one is you can click on Complete Merge, and then you can either print them out directly to the printer, or you can preview them and see what they are going to look like. And notice at this point I have a letter for each specific user. This is how the mail merge functionality works. You do not need to keep that merged results form. You can just utilize the form if you have to recreate this for the future. To insert also, let's say, clip art, you click on Insert, then Clip Art, and then you choose Strip or whatever it may need. You may need. As soon as I click on Preview your letters, then complete the merge, edit each individual letter. Now each letter will have a clip art in it. So the key is to go and modify that form and then merge the document and then complete the merge again. One of the nice features about Excel is that you can use pivot tables, and it is a powerful tool and to analyze data. And there are a couple of requirements for the pivot tables. The spreadsheet should have column titles for each column, such as in our case here you have recruiter, job number, start date, salary level, FTE, contracts, and so on. And then the other requirement is that there should be no empty cells of data. So in our case here we have to make sure that there are no empty cells. You have to have some kind of value in there. So I'm going to put no for those cells. And then, so we'll need to complete this for the rest here. So there should be no empty cells, basically. And the third one, the data types should be the same. So if you have date format here, all the values in this column needs to be date. If you have a number here, all the values should be the number value. And then, so that's all the criteria here. So you should have columns, you should have no cells without any values, and the data types should be of the same kind depending on each column. Now, to start creating the pivot table, all you have to do is you select the data area that you want to include in your pivot table, and then you click on Insert, and then choose Pivot Table, and then Pivot Table again. And then you tell it that you want the selected range, which means what I have just selected at this point, and then you can add them to a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. To add them to a new worksheet, you just click OK, and then at this point you are working on a completely new worksheet, as you see. At this point, the nice thing about Pivot Table is that you can choose to display the data in all kinds of different ways, any way you want, and analyze it basically in all kinds of different ways. So let's say I want to see only the recruiter names, and it shows all the recruiters. And then let's say I want to see as well the job number by recruiter. And then let's say I want the start date to be one of the filters. So you can drag it under filter here, and notice here on the start date that will give you a drop down here. Now, let's say I also want the salary level to be displayed and also location. Notice when I choose location now, for each person or recruiter, you also have the city right below it. So now let's say I want to put the city on the filter as well, and notice now I'm filtering by start date and by location as well. So I could say I want to see all the customers or all the recruiters that had a start date on 6/1, 6/2, and 6/3, and that's all I need. And I click OK, and notice it's sorting the data automatically by listing only those specific people on a specific date. Or if I want to remove the start date filter, I can uncheck it and choose all to select all of them. Then it will display them all, and then I can filter by location. So let's say I want to see only the ones from San Francisco or from Seattle, or let's say San Francisco and Seattle. Click OK, and these are all the recruiters from those specific cities or specific criteria. Then you can also sort by display, just like we did before, only by specific people to be listed, and so on. So it gives you a lot of flexibility as to what you want to display and how you want to sort that data. Let's say I want to sort by contract, only those that have a contract. And at this point I can go under contract, yes, no, and let's say I want only those with a contract, and notice you can display the data with all kinds of different criterias and different ways. If you had groups, you could also group the data and sort it all in various different ways as well. So basically what I'd recommend is that you play with this. Again, the idea here is that it creates, you select the table or the spreadsheet like we did before here, and then it creates a new sheet. You can enter this pivot table in a new sheet, and then you can sort the data different ways. So it's very powerful. Play with it, and it should be very useful.